woman with short brown hair sits at a table, looking shocked by what she's hearing. Her shock erupts as she asks, "What? So suddenly?" while her long-haired friend calmly sips her drink. The brown-haired woman quickly recovers, congratulating her friend on the wedding and praising her wonderful boyfriend. The long-haired woman smiles sweetly, asking if her friend will come to the wedding. The brown-haired woman happily accepts the wedding invitation. Upon reading the invitation, the brown-haired woman notes a coincidence. The groom has the same name as her husband, prompting a chilling laugh from her friend. Haha. The black-haired woman smiles coldly, telling the woman named Biola that it is no coincidence. A photo of the black-haired woman kissing a man is slammed on the table, and Biola is horrified to realize the man is her own husband. The mistress cruelly reveals they are getting married on her and Biola's 6-year anniversary, leaving Biola clutching the invitation in stunned silence. The mistress, cradling her stomach, drops the final bomb. The baby is Do-Yun's. The reveal is so shocking, Biola violently shoves her chair back in disbelief. In a flashback, Biola confronts her husband Do-Yun, who coldly refuses to grant her a divorce. Overwhelmed by betrayal and grief, Biola breaks down completely as someone tells her to get a grip. The mistress delivers the final devastating blow. She is legally married to Do-Yun, making Biola the mistress all along, and taunts her about why he never registered their marriage. Biola's reality shatters. Her world, inverting as a knife, lies on the table before her. The mistress coldly looks down on the sobbing Biola and tells her to get out of their lives. Biola weeps, crushed by the painful realization that her entire life with him was a lie. She recalls how, after the devastating truth was revealed, time became a blur, and she isolated herself completely. In the present, she wears a cap and a hoodie, having distanced herself from everyone she knew. She reflects on how she has been running from that traumatic moment for the past 3 years. Resolving to stop running, she finds a painful similarity between herself and the tragic heroine of a book she's reading, the Countess of Elgrin. The novel tells the story of the philandering Count Eric and his wife Rosé, who silently endures his betrayals. Biola admits she started reading the book to forget her own foolish and painful past. Suddenly, her ceiling cracks and collapses on top of her. She screams in terror. Trapped under falling debris, she desperately cries for someone to save her. Her terrified cries for help echo as the collapse continues around her. In what she believes are her final moments, she wishes for the world to end, but realizes this wasn't the ending she wanted. The scene shifts to a bright, opulent mansion bathed in sunlight. A doctor bows to a nobleman, explaining that a woman has suffered a great shock, and the nobleman accepts he has no excuse. The doctor cheerfully reassures him that her health is fine. But bang! He's suddenly interrupted. The doctor is sent flying out of the room. A tiny chibi version of the doctor sits on a pink-haired woman's head, complaining about his job as she slowly blinks awake. The doctor rushes to the bedside, asking if Lady Wentz is all right, but she seems confused by the name. Now inhabiting the body of the pink-haired woman, she stares at her hand in bewildered confusion. The doctor addresses her as Rosé Wentz, advising the startled woman not to strain her weak body. A title card introduces her new identity, Rosé Wentz, the only daughter of a fallen count family. The narration explains that this foolish woman turned her back on her family for a man who was her family's mortal enemy. Panicked, she denies being Rosé Wentz, insisting this must all be a dream while the doctor looks on in confusion. Realizing this isn't a fairy tale but a repeat of her tragic life, she questions what she did to deserve this fate. Crushed by despair, she thinks she would have rather died in the building collapse. T-esque. She opens her eyes to find a shirtless man in bed with her, who asks if she's finally coming to her senses. Flustered, she makes an excuse about it being that time of the month to explain her weak condition. Her new husband coldly cuts through her lie, asking if she forgot she collapsed from a miscarriage. Her eyes widen in horror as she processes the devastating word, miscarriage. She realizes this is the moment in the novel where Rose regains her memory, and she seethes with anger at the shameless bastard who hasn't even apologized. The Count dismisses her feelings, callously noting it took them 3 years to finally conceive. No, she shoves him away, begging him to stop and give her time to recover. Her defiance is met with violence as he grabs her by the throat, telling her she's misunderstanding the situation. Choking her, he sneers that she was the one who insisted on having a child, so she has no right to refuse. Pinned to the bed and overpowered, she lies defeated and terrified. Her husband coldly tells her to stay out of his business and not to forget what happened, mocking her intelligence. Slam. He leaves with a sarcastic, "Take care," leaving her clutching her bruised throat in shock. Enraged, she silently screams at the injustice of living with the trashy Eric and curses the author of this crazy story. Looking out at the grand estate, she wonders how she can possibly escape this fate. Peering through a window, she wishes for an ally, reasoning that the original Rosé must have had someone she trusted. Suddenly, a commotion erupts as two maids drag a third, scolding her for not doing her work for days. Rosé asks what's happening, and a different maid apologizes, explaining that a maid named Doana has been mentally unstable. The blonde maid, Doana, seethes, wishing she had her phone to film the abuse and sue everyone. As ordered, the defiant blonde maid is brought before Rosé. Rosé sits calmly, a gentle smile on her face as she waits. Shh! Realizing this isn't a dream, Doana panics, whispering in disbelief that they are both inside the novel. Rosé explains her own confusion since waking up, and Doana gasps, connecting Rosé's accident to the building collapse they were both in. Doana smiles, relieved they are together, and suggests they become friends in this new world. Rosé agrees, thinking to herself that meeting someone from her world might be a lucky connection. The two become fast friends, and Rosé feels hopeful, believing she can face this new life with Doana by her side. A dark memory surfaces as the blonde maid introduces herself as Lee Gyoru, a name meant to ensure she never loses. Gyoru smiles, telling her to remember the uncommon name as she offers her friendship. Rosé is horrified, recognizing the face and name of her friend of 10 years, the very woman who stole her husband. The terrible truth echoes in her mind. This is the one who stole her husband. Forcing a smile, Rosé compliments the name Gyoru, but internally she knows she can't be certain yet. Probing for confirmation, Rosé asks Gyoru how old she is. Gyoru says she's 29, crying theatrically about how unfair it is that she was already married and had a husband. It's confirmed. A cold dread washes over Rosé as she realizes the person she never wanted to see again is right here. Gyoru playfully asks for Rosé's name, wondering if they're the same age. Rosé lies, introducing herself as Kim Hana, knowing Gyoru won't recognize the new name she was forced to take. She recalls having to abandon her old name, Kim Byolta, and living a quiet, friendless life after the betrayal. Gyoru laments their shared cruel fate, then adds that Rosé reminds her of a friend, making it nice to meet her. In a flash of memory, Gyoru inwardly taunts the memory of Kim Byola, calling her pathetic for just crying that day. Feigning ignorance, Gyoru asks Rosé to explain the plot of the novel she knows nothing about. Rosé, no longer naive, decides to conceal the story's tragic nature, simply calling it a deep romance. Gyoru is stunned when Rosé reveals she is just a nameless extra and demands to know who the main character is. Rosé simply smiles, taking a sip of her tea. You? Gyoru asks in disbelief, and Rosé calmly confirms that's how things turned out. Gyoru internally scoffs at Rosé's tacky appearance, convinced she has better looks and style. Assuming the male lead must be predictable if Rosé is the heroine, Gyoru asks what kind of person Count Wentz is. Rosé dreamily describes Eric as incredibly handsome, explaining that the original Rosé fell for him at first sight and pursued him. Gyoru scoffs, unconvinced, stating she hasn't seen anyone particularly good-looking in the mansion. Rosé assures her she'll know him when she sees him, adding that he's a bit cold to her, which sparks Gyoru's interest. Seeing through Gyoru's feigned concern, Rosé inwardly vows not to be fooled again, while outwardly insisting her husband cares deeply for her. Just then, Count Eric de Wentz enters the room, complaining loudly about his lack of sleep from work. Gyoru whispers to Rosé, breathlessly asking who the handsome man is. With a calm expression, Rosé introduces her husband, Count Eric de Wentz. Gyoru's eyes widen with greedy delight as she beholds the Count. Rosé sees Gyoru's familiar desire to take what is hers, and silently offers her a final chance to walk away from this disastrous path. Gyoru gracefully curtsies, introducing herself to the Count with a charming smile. She introduces herself as Doana, a close friend of Rosé, and the Count expresses surprise that his wife has such a friend. Gyoru spins a tale about being childhood friends, and as they chat, Rosé sees with certainty that Gyoru is choosing to ruin her own fate once again. Gyoru lavishes praise on the Count, telling him she's heard he's an amazing man and that it's all true. Her mind races, seeing a handsome, wealthy man with a powerful family, a prize prepared just for her. Turning to Rosé with a smug smile, Gyoru asks if she doesn't suit the role of Countess better, declaring that the world revolves around her. A memory surfaces of Gyoru callously telling Biola's ex-husband that she felt unwell and was leaving first. Hearing Gyoru's words echo in her mind, Rosé freezes in shock as her husband calls out her name. Rosé is horrified that Gyoru, the person she never wanted to see again, is here in this novel with her, but then realizes this might be for the best, a chance for Trash to be with Trash so she can escape. A twisted smile spreads across Rosé's face as she understands her new purpose, to get rid of two pieces of trash at once. Leaning back with newfound confidence, Rosé vows that she will not be a pushover like she was before. She recalls the original Rosé's backstory. She was the daughter of a fallen noble family who begged to marry Eric. The memory shows how Rosé's parents cut all ties with her for choosing to marry Eric. Because Rosé was disowned, the novel contains little information about her family, and she fears they would turn her away now. She closes her eyes, realizing with dread that getting a divorce would likely leave her homeless. No. Her eyes snap open as she clenches her fist, determined to get divorced and live an amazing life no matter what. To achieve her goal, Rosé knows she needs information and resolves to start studying immediately. She approaches two maids in the hallway, who politely ask how they can assist her. Rosé requests to speak with the butler, Mr. Gwen, and the maids confirm his name. Sitting with the butler, Mr. Gwen, Rosé sips her tea and confirms his suspicion that she is asking for a tutor. Surprised by her request, Mr. Gwen asks for the reason behind this sudden interest in studying. Rosé calmly explains that as the Countess, she must understand the world, especially if she is to join high society. The butler is moved, thinking of her hardships and admiring her new determination to stand on her own feet. Mr. Gwen agrees to speak to the Count for her, and Rosé feels relieved that her plan is working. As she leaves, Rosé notices the servant's tense atmosphere, just as she overhears Gyoru flirting with the Count nearby. Her heart sinks as she sees Eric and Gyoru in an intimate embrace, confirming they are both just as trashy as she thought. Resigned but resolute, Rosé decides to let them have each other, vowing to make a fresh start for herself. The butler informs Count Eric that Rose has requested a governess. Eric scoffs, recalling that when he previously suggested she do something, she had refused to lift a finger. He tells the butler to do as she likes, and Mr. Gwen asks what kind of teacher to hire from his list. Eric dismissively tells the butler to handle it himself, and not to bother him with such trivial matters. His thoughts drift to Joanna, smiling as he remembers letting her sleep in after their time together yesterday. His expression hardens as he warns the butler that he is not in the habit of sharing what is his. The flustered butler quickly apologizes and hurries away from the couple. Eric turns back to Gyoru, kissing her forehead and asking if she's satisfied yet. Eric smugly reminds Gyoru how much she enjoyed herself, and she inwardly admits that while he's not perfect, his skills in bed were amazing. Meanwhile, Rosé throws her quill down in frustration, overwhelmed by how difficult her first lessons are. A quick history lesson reveals that Rosé's family, the House of Sevlan, was ruined in a power struggle after choosing the losing side. Rosé is horrified, realizing she unwittingly married Eric, the very man whose family destroyed her own. Her governess explains the empire's history, noting the previous rulers died early and the crown prince's uncle took the throne, which was for the best. The governess warns her to avoid the ruthless and cruel crown prince at all costs. Rosé recalls that the crown prince is fated to be executed in the novel, but still decides to be careful. A maid informs Rose that the carriage she ordered is ready to take her to an auction to see Count Eric's gift. Annoyed at the original Rosé's foolishness, she forces a smile and agrees to go quickly. At night, Rosé reflects on the original story, remembering a letter and a broken sapphire necklace. Memories from the novel flash by, Rosé's first meeting with Eric and a tense encounter with the blonde crown prince. Arriving at the auction, Rosé spots the blonde man, the infamous crown prince, sitting nonchalantly in a chair. Unaware of his identity, Rosé taps the man on the shoulder and politely informs him that he's sitting in her seat. The blonde man glances at her with disdain, scoffing at the idea of assigned seats. Her escort panics and tries to stop her as she stands bewildered, holding her bidding paddle. The man urgently whispers that her paddle is for bidding, not a seat number, and that she can sit anywhere. Mortified, Rosé realizes her mistake as the intimidating blonde man continues to stare at her. Her escort quickly apologizes on her behalf, explaining that Rosé is not accustomed to such events. Rosé winces, knowing she has to fix this embarrassing situation herself. Taking a deep breath, she steps forward and accepts full responsibility for her mistake, apologizing directly to the blonde man. She bows deeply, sincerely asking him to forgive her ignorance and the offense she caused. Seeing that the intimidating blonde man isn't going to make a scene, Rosé decides to slip away. The blonde man, holding paddle 38, commands her to sit, leaving Rosé stunned as he coldly repeats the order. He tells her to sit quickly before the auction starts, and she grits her teeth in mortified compliance. Nervously taking her seat, Rosé resolves to stay quiet and not get on the man's nerves any further. The auction begins with a flourish, as the auctioneer announces that money is king and presents the first item. Bidding erupts immediately as two nobles shout competing offers for 30 and 35 million res. Rosé reflects on the familiar currency value from her past life, astounded by the noble's extravagant spending. The auctioneer unveils a glittering blue necklace called Luna's Tear, and the crowd roars, "Wow!" The bidding starts at 50 million res and rapidly climbs to a staggering 80 million. Rosé scoffs, remembering from the novel that the necklace is a fake, and Eric was humiliated for buying it. The blonde man calmly raises his paddle, bidding an astonishing 100 million res. As the bidding war escalates even higher, Rosé panics, watching the price skyrocket. Frustrated, Rosé knows she can't just sit by and watch this disaster happen. The blonde man casually begins to raise his bid to 130 million. In a moment of panic, Rosé grabs his arm, shouting at him not to buy the necklace. He asks what she is doing as she frantically explains that buying the necklace would be a huge waste of money. The blonde man coldly asks what his finances have to do with her, causing Rosé to freeze in place. Rosé lets go of his arm, immediately regretting her impulsive move. She inwardly berates herself for her meddlesome habit, having acted without thinking. Composing herself, Rosé boldly declares the necklace is a fake, but he challenges her, asking if she's insulting all the nobles present. She nervously clarifies that the other nobles are likely being deceived as well. The blonde man leans in with a smirk, warning that if she's wrong, she will pay dearly for interfering. Suddenly, a woman's voice calls out, "Countess Wens," and Rosé turns, shocked that someone knows her identity. The auctioneer announces that the Tear of Luna has been sold for an unbelievable 3.6 billion less. The blonde man gives her a chilling smile, leaving Rose to wonder what she's gotten herself into. Convinced her life is now on the line, Rosé grabs him and frantically insists the necklace is a fake. He questions her about betting her life, and she realizes her mistake, having meant to bet her neck. Rosé flails in panic, trying to take back her mortifying slip of the tongue. The blonde man tells her he's not interested in taken women, but appreciates her sincere effort to get his attention. Completely flustered, Rosé tries to deny his insinuation, insisting that's not what she meant at all. As he walks away, an announcer calls out his title, Grand Duke Artian. The Grand Duke reflects on the encounter, feeling that something is fishy and wondering if he should have ignored her. He shrugs it off, deciding he can just buy the necklace from the winner later if he wants it. He recalls Rosé's desperate plea, realizing she is the spitting image of a woman named Lady Seviat from his past. Memory surfaces of a young Rosé hiding behind a woman's dress, being urged to say hello. In the memory, the little girl tearfully insists the blonde boy before her is not her prince. The Grand Duke smiles at the memory, thinking how cute her crying face was back then. Rosé buries her face in her hands in utter embarrassment as her escort knight calls out her name, Cern. Cern asks if she made a mistake with the Grand Duke, and she miserably confirms that she did. Her escort knight, Cern, tells her not to worry, reassuringly vowing to protect her no matter what. Changing the subject, Cern asks how a counterfeit item could have been sold at such a prestigious auction. Rosé whispers her suspicion that someone must have switched the real necklace with a fake. Stunned, Cern asks how she could possibly know that, leaning in close to hear her secret. Rosé stammers that she saw it in a dream, knowing it sounds crazy as Cern looks on with disbelief from their carriage. The scene transitions back to the Grand Wens estate. While reviewing documents in her study, Rosé hears Gyoru call her name. Gyoru leans over her shoulder and peers at the papers, asking what she is always staring at. Rosé coolly replies that she's just bored. Gyoru glances at the papers dismissively, commenting that it's not like anyone in the mansion keeps Rosé company. With a look of feigned sympathy, Gyoru suggests that Rosé must be lonely and wishes the Count were kinder to her. Gyoru compliments Rose's brooch, saying it looks great and must be a gift from Eric. Rosé smiles and agrees that the gift is pretty, adding that she recently got a boyfriend. Gyoru calls her name Rose, snapping her out of a bitter memory where she realizes Gyoru's once happy expression was actually a look of smug superiority. Startled, Rosé apologizes, claiming she was just admiring Gyoru's pretty earrings and wanted a closer look. Gyoru smugly touches her earring, wondering how he picked something that matches her so perfectly. Feigning innocence, Rosé asks how Gyoru met her boyfriend, and Gyoru replies that it felt like fate. Gyoru leans back with a blissful expression, declaring that her boyfriend is absolutely perfect. Inwardly, Gyoru thinks about her perfect plan to become the Countess, vowing not to fail in this life. A flashback reveals Gyoru's past life, where she was shunned by her parents for stealing her friend's husband and regretted her marriage. She reflects that being foolishly married to Lee Do-hyun was a mistake, but being possessed into this novel feels like a chance from God. Gyoru, remembering her past life as Gyoru, sees this as a chance to live at her true level, and recalls bragging to her struggling friend about her own perfect relationship. In a memory, Gyoru's friend Dowana tearfully thanks her for being her only friend, as Gyoru now recalls how foolish she once was. In the present, Rosé looks at Gyoru and wonders just how pathetic she must seem to her now. Mr. Gwen enters, announcing that a letter has arrived for Rosé, who seems surprised. Rosé reads the letter with a puzzled expression, thinking she has no high society connections. She gasps in shock, recognizing the wax seal on the envelope. Gyoru peeks at the letter, guessing it's a party invitation, while Rosé coldly tells her to hand it over. Gyoru excitedly asks to come along, insisting that's what friends are for, much to Rosé's visible annoyance. Rosé agrees, but slyly reminds Gyoru that only nobles are allowed in and maids can't enter. Rosé taunts Gyoru, suggesting she could attend as her maid, causing Gyoru to slam the table in anger. What do you mean by that? Gyoru fumes, unable to believe Rosé would mock her, while Rosé feigns innocence, asking if she's upset and claiming she was just thinking of her. Rosé continues her charade, coolly repeating that she only said it because she was thinking of Gyoru. Gyoru forces a smile, claiming she's just disappointed, while inwardly seething at how annoying Rosé is. Rosé notes Gyoru's forced smile and internal anger before Gyoru changes the subject, asking who sent the invitation. Rosé is shocked to see the sender as Grand Duke Ardum and wonders why he'd send her anything. She reflects that she and the Grand Duke never met in the original story, but he's now inviting her to his salon after their auction encounter. Rosé realizes the invitation is addressed only to her, not the Count, and recalls a story of another noble gifting the Empress a fake tear of Luna. She deduces that the Grand Duke must have heard about the second fake necklace, and the palace's attempt to cover it up. Rosé feels a chill, remembering she talked him out of buying it, but then dismisses her worry, recalling he's fated to die soon anyway. Shaking off her grim thoughts, Rosé decides to treat the invitation as a simple chance to explore the social scene. Gyoru watches Rosé's strange behavior, realizing she can't go to the party and refusing to attend as a mere lackey. Gyoru thoughtfully plots, determined to find a way to attend the party. With a flash of inspiration, Gyoru throws open Rosé's wardrobe. She scoffs at Rose's tacky clothes, vowing to replace them all when she becomes the Countess. Trying on a dress, Gyoru decides she will just ask the Count to take her to the party, as she needs to meet high society anyway. After admiring herself, Gyoru rummages through Rose's things and discovers a tiny pair of baby shoes. Gyoru callously wonders why Rosé would keep something so useless after her miscarriage. Remembering her past self watching a baby cry, Gyoru scoffs at the thought of motherhood, finding it a waste of time better spent on skincare. Rosé catches her in the closet and asks what she's doing. Gyoru claims she was just borrowing something to wear. Gyoru smoothly offers her help as a friend, but Rosé thinks to herself that she couldn't care less about losing old things. Rosé panics when she sees what Gyoru is holding, lunging forward and yelling, "Not that one!" Gyoru defiantly holds the baby shoe, demanding an explanation, as a flustered Rosé apologizes and says she can't have it. Rosé looks down at the small brooch in her hand, on the verge of tears. Gyoru smirks, mocking the brooch as that gift, and boasting that she's already received 3 from the Count, calling Rosé charmless. Leaning in, Gyoru offers to ask the Count for a gift on Rosé's behalf, certain he'll listen to her. Gyoru reveals she's now the Count's personal maid, flashing back to an intimate moment with him, and gloats about how much time she spends with him. Rosé clenches her fist, fully aware that Gyoru knows how cold the Count is to her and is deliberately trying to hurt her. Rosé retreats, making an excuse to leave, while Gyoru winks smugly, thinking the real Rosé would be devastated. As she walks away, Rosé thinks that unfortunately for Gyoru, she is not the real Rosé. Rosé firmly closes the study door behind her, leaving Gyoru to her schemes. Rosé watches Gyoru leave, inwardly vowing to let her keep coveting everything Rosé has. Stepping out of the study, Rosé firmly closes the door on the room and its scattered papers. Rosé returns to find the papers still a mess, and as she picks one up, she's horrified to read about the planned execution of Grand Duke Artem. A dark vision reveals a plot to assassinate the Grand Duke in a way that leaves no room for doubt or suspicion of poisoning. Rosé reads on in terror, learning of the plan to destroy Grand Duke Artem's reputation with a recent incident to justify his execution. Stunned by the horrifying revelation, Rosé drops the paper in disbelief. She panics, realizing they're plotting to kill the Grand Duke and torn over whether to warn him or save her own skin. The Count bursts into the study, demanding to know what she's doing there, and revealing that he heard from that girl Doana. Rosé turns from the window, startled by his sudden appearance. Trying to appear natural, Rosé claims she only came in for a book and saw the papers scattered by the wind. The Count eyes her suspiciously, noting her haste, and offers to help her clean up the documents. As he reaches for a paper, Rosé instinctively slaps his hand away, yelling at him to stop. Enraged, the Count asks if she read the documents, but she deflects, demanding to know why he's in her study without permission. She fabricates a story about having private lessons, but he inwardly scoffs at her excuse, remembering her tutor. Calling himself careless, the Count forbids her from entering the study again, letting it go just this once. As he leaves, he advises her to rest her hand, leaving Rosé stunned and speechless. Breathing a sigh of relief, Rosé is left to ponder what to do about the impending danger to Grand Duke Artem. That evening, the scene shifts to a long, silent dinner between Rosé and the Count. The Count watches her from the other end of the table with a cold, calculating gaze. He proposes they take a trip in a week, but Rosé icily retorts that he should take his mistress instead. Guessing his offer is out of guilt for hitting her hand, Rosé curtly refuses, stating she already has plans. The Count is perplexed by her sudden refusal, and her feigned ignorance of her own upcoming birthday, which she always made a fuss about. Rosé coolly informs him that her plans are to attend a banquet hosted by Grand Duke Artem. Shocked, the Count questions if Grand Duke Artem sent an invitation specifically to her. Rosé confirms that he did, feigning a slight confusion of her own. He aggressively grills her, demanding to know what connection she could possibly have with the Grand Duke. Finding him annoying, Rose waves him off, explaining she simply ran into the Duke while shopping for his gift. Her words pique the Count's suspicion, as he notes she claimed to forget her birthday, but was still shopping for a gift. He arrogantly concludes she's just playing hard to gain his attention and decides to let it slide. The Count mulls over why the Duke would invite only Rosé, but ultimately decides it doesn't matter what the Duke is thinking. Changing his mind, the Count graciously postpones their trip and announces his intention to attend the Grand Duke's banquet as well. A sinister smile crosses his lips as he thinks of the party as a grand finale for the Duke. A flashback begins, revealing Gyoru's thoughts about her occasional late-night visits. A memory shows Gyoru with another man, as she scoffs at the lowly status of the Knight Cern. Gyoru impatiently pushes past another maid, hurrying to answer a summons. Gyoru, now calling herself Doana, cheerfully enters the Count's bedroom, only for him to scold her for being late. She offers an excuse, but the Count reminds her that he had her assigned exclusively to him. Gyoru slyly blames the Countess for her tardiness, then sits seductively on his bed. The Count pulls her into his arms, telling her to forget Rosé and do exactly as he says. 4 days before the banquet, Rosé studies a list of names, wishing for cameras to help her recognize the nobles. Rosé strategizes for the party, noting she must watch out for the powerful Duchess Bella and Eric's disapproving mother Tertia. Overwhelmed by the assassination plot, she sighs in frustration, wishing she had a clever solution like other protagonists, when a voice chides her. Startled, Rosé turns to see the Count, who remarks that she didn't even notice him walk in. He gently reaches out and touches her face. The Count clarifies he isn't referring to her hand this time. He demands his birthday present, reminding her she claimed to have bought one. Rosé apologizes, saying she couldn't prepare a gift, but he points to a wrapped box on her desk. Slap! Eric explodes with fury, assuming the gift is for the Duke, and strikes Rose for disrespecting him on his own birthday. Clutching his hand, the Count furiously demands to know what she is doing. Rosé desperately explains that since the Grand Duke invited her when no one else would, she only wanted to bring a small gift as thanks. The Count watches her, thinking about poor Rosé and the gift she was holding. Rosé remembers her past self, who struggled desperately to be loved by Eric. On the way to the banquet, the carriage ride with the Count is uncomfortably silent, and Rosé wishes he just stayed home. Upon arrival, the Count walks off without even escorting her, leaving Rosé stunned. Stepping out of the carriage, Rosé scoffs, telling herself she wasn't expecting any courtesy from that rude jerk anyway. Whoops! She stumbles while exiting the carriage, panicking that a fall will ruin her dress and keep her from the banquet. As she falls, her thoughts race with the fear of being unable to attend the party. Suddenly, a pair of strong arms catches her just in time. Stunned, Rosé looks up to see Grand Duke Artem, who greets her as Countess Wins. After she thanks him, the Duke graciously offers to be her escort since she appears to be alone. Just as she's about to accept, the Count suddenly grabs her arm, smugly declaring that his wife doesn't need an escort. Holding Rosé, the Count taunts the Duke, suggesting his concern means he's interested in his wife. The Duke slaps the Count's hand away, retorting that he's only interested because the Count clearly isn't. The Count recoils in pain as the Duke explains he was just offering help. The Duke admonishes the Count, telling him to show some concern for his wife, who is clearly hurt. The Count smirks, saying he'll spend some quality time with his wife and shoots the Duke a glare. After telling the Duke to tend to his guests, the Count turns away, leaving the Duke looking thoughtful. The Duke leans in close, whispering a veiled threat that he's playing the gentleman for now but would love to rip out the Count's insolent tongue, calling him an immature cub. The Duke warns him to behave or risk drawing unwanted attention, leaving the Count seething and calling him a pompous bastard. The Count furiously orders Rose back to the mansion, threatening her not to make a scene. He storms off, abandoning her outside the Grand Estate as she fumes in frustration. Alone, Rosé can't believe she ended up having to enter the banquet by herself. An announcer presents Countess Roge of House Wens as she enters, and she tells herself to stay calm. A noblewoman with a dark fan spots Rosé's arrival with a sly smile. Guests immediately begin to whisper, pitying her and assuming she followed her husband like a lost chick. The gossip continues as partygoers murmur that she must have no pride. Surrounded by the gossiping crowd, Rosé realizes making friends will be harder than she thought. Determined not to give up, she walks forward with resolve. Rosé heads for the refreshments, deciding to get a drink and wait for an opportunity. As she reaches for a glass, she stops, her eyes widening in surprise. Grand Duke Artem is there, holding a glass out to her. Touched that he remembered, Rosé thanks him for catching her when she fell from the carriage. The Duke dismisses her thanks and gets straight to the point, asking how she knew the moon tear was a fake. Rosé panics, realizing she can't possibly explain that she read about it in a novel. She quickly lies, claiming she heard the real moon tear glows red under light, which the auction piece didn't. Trying to end the conversation, she insists there's only one authentic moon tear and asks him to drop the subject. Rosé decides she needs to leave before the situation gets more complicated. Wishing the Duke a good evening, she attempts to make a quick exit. The Duke stops her, asking her to dance with him before she goes. Rosé hesitates, wanting to avoid the Duke, but also wondering where Eric has disappeared to. A nearby nobleman informs her that her husband is already busy having fun with another woman. Resigned, she accepts the Duke's dance, inwardly calling her husband useless. The Duke teases her clumsy dancing, and she internally grumbles that she only had a few hours to practice. As she stumbles, he catches her, and she briefly wonders if he's being considerate. The two of them share a graceful dance, moving elegantly across the floor. After the dance, Rose thanks the Duke and gives a polite curtsy. Nearby noblewomen mock her, criticizing her lack of a debutante ball and her poor dancing skills. As Rosé walks away, a man remarks that the Count must be exhausted dealing with her. The Count suddenly grabs her, furiously asking why she's dancing with the Duke when she was meant to keep a low profile. The Count sneers at her, asking if she danced with the Duke to get his attention and calling her desperate. Rosé is shaken, realizing with a start that he still sees her as a woman desperate for his affection. She turns away, stunned and hurt by his cruel assumption. Leaning in close, he smugly says he hasn't hugged her in 3 weeks, and assumes she must have missed him. As he offers to make it up to her swat, he is suddenly slapped across the face. Rosé quickly backs away, stammering that they've both had too much to drink. Stunned, the Count demands to know what she's doing as she announces she's going to rest. She turns and flees, while he shouts for her to wait. Running through the garden, Rosé feels that something is wrong, remembering how Eric has been avoiding her. The Count watches her leave, annoyed that things were just getting interesting, as Joanna walks past with another man in the background. He smirks, deciding to forget about it and focus on what he needs to do. Disgusted with her husband, Rosé is walking alone in the garden when she hears a scream for help and suddenly starts to choke. She collapses, thinking it sounded like someone was dying, and panics that she's trapped in a cliché plot, unable to move. Paralyzed by fear, she desperately thinks she needs to escape before her second life ends so absurdly. A voice calls out to her, and she sees Grand Duke Artem stepping out from behind a stone wall. The Duke asks if she's all right, but she stares at his blood-stained uniform in hand, panicking that he's killed someone. He offers his bloody hand, but she recoils, and he wryly notes his bad manners. Pressing on, Rosé asks what he wants her to see, then bravely offers to overlook the murder she assumes he committed. The Duke chuckles, amused that she thinks he's a murderer, while she explains that she heard a scream. He grows serious, acknowledging that a death at his party would harm him above all others. Looking at his hand, he concedes that his appearance is misleading. He asks her to follow him, promising to show her the truth of what happened. He leads her to a clearing where she sees a large pool of blood on the ground and asks what happened. He explains he just saved Marquis Bled, who was being attacked by a monster. He clarifies the blood splattered on him while checking on the Marquis, and that the monster fled upon hearing her footsteps, making Rosé realize her misunderstanding. Suddenly, guards arrive, and their leader shouts an order to arrest the Duke immediately. An older man, Duke Felice, approaches, smugly telling Duke Artem he always knew this would happen, and that he has finally gone too far. Duke Felice accuses Artem of attacking Marquis Bled, a man cherished by his majesty, as Artem glares back in fury. Clenching his fist, Artem realizes he's been led into a deliberate trap. Just as the guards move to seize him, Rosé steps forward, placing herself in front of the Duke. She stands defiantly, ready to speak up and intervene. When Duke Felice demands to know what right she has to interfere, Rosé calmly declares that she witnessed the Duke saving the Marquis from a monster. Duke Felice is stunned, realizing with shock that there was a witness to the entire event. The surrounding guests murmur in confusion, wondering what is happening. Regaining his composure, Duke Felice questions why Rosé is in the garden with the Duke. He points to her dirt-stained dress, assuming she will back down now for her husband's sake. Rosé sees through his attempt to dismiss her and resolves not to be swayed. Feigning distress, she weaves a tale about getting lost in the garden after coming out with her husband. She illustrates her story with a cute flashback, claiming the Duke saved her from a monster, which prompts Duke Felice to demand where the monster is. The Duke smoothly interjects, claiming the monster disappeared while he was fetching help for the Marquis, surprising Rosé with his quick thinking. Rosé plays along, offering a sweet and relieved smile. The Duke hides a smirk behind his hand, pleased with their successful ruse. A dark flashback reveals Duke Felice's inner rage as he curses them for finding a witness and foiling his perfect plan. Duke Felice and his men are flustered, wondering what to do now that their plan has been complicated by a monster story. Rosé politely thanks Duke Felice, internally identifying him as a powerful political player who will one day discard her family. She pointedly asks him to send her regards to Count Wentz, subtly showing she knows he's involved. In the relative quiet of the garden path, Rosé thinks that they somehow managed to get through the ordeal. She starts to leave but notices Duke Artem is following her and wonders why. The scene focuses on her elegant shoes as she walks along the path. Turning back, she looks at Duke Artem, who asks if she has something more to say. He leans in, explaining he's just curious why she stayed to help him. He asks why she chose to believe and assist him when she could have simply walked away. Rosé recalls the Duke's fearsome reputation, but remembers that he believed in her testimony too. A confident smile spreads across her face as she prepares her answer. She explains that she wanted to repay the gentleman who listened to an ordinary woman's words. With a clever smile, she states she was simply returning the favor in her own way. The Duke gently touches her face, telling her to ask for anything since she saved his life. Flustered, Rosé insists that wasn't why she helped him. Grabbing his hand, she makes a bold request. Please help me get a divorce. The Duke is surprised by her request for a divorce as she internally reaffirms that Eric is not a decent man. She declares with conviction that she wants to correct her past foolishness and live a different life. The Duke is visibly amused by her plea, but Rosé insists she is being serious. He agrees it's a wise decision and notes that her parents will be glad to hear it. He asks if she means the Earl of Serviat, revealing that he and her father have had business dealings. He adds that her parents are very worried about her, a fact that clearly moves Rosé. Rosé remembers her parents, who trusted and waited for her for 3 long years despite her foolish choices. She smiles warmly and asks the Duke if he could let her parents know she will visit them soon. He agrees and immediately asks when she plans to get the divorce, to which she replies, as soon as possible. The Duke explains the divorce process is streamlined now, requiring only signed papers, and concludes there's not much he can do to help. Rosé looks down, appearing troubled by this information. Hesitantly, she makes an unexpected request, asking if he could lend her some money. Puff the Duke laughs, calling her unpredictable, while she begs him to take her seriously as the Count storms off in the background. Rosé the Count shouts her name, startling both her and the Duke. The Count stomps toward them, furiously demanding to know what kind of mess she's making. He threatens to leave her behind if she doesn't come at once, and Rosé notices his disheveled clothes, realizing what he was up to. Smiling graciously at the Duke, Rosé says she must go, but asks to continue their talk later. The Duke nods, promising to send someone to the Wentz estate soon. No, please don't, Rosé says, panicking. She explains her husband would torment her if he found out they were exchanging letters, and insists she will be the one to reach out first. Waving goodbye, she hurries away from the Duke. As she runs off, her voice trails behind her, calling, "Eric, wait!" Duke Artem watches her leave with a pensive expression. He muses on her strange request, wondering if she was serious about the money or just finding an excuse to stay connected to him. He walks away, thinking that while she's often sharp, she can be unexpectedly clumsy. He reflects on how impressive it was that she didn't scream during the monster incident, realizing how it could have been misconstrued. He coldly notes the boldness of his enemies and orders an unseen subordinate to clean up the mess with no loose ends. He smiles faintly, deciding to assign someone to watch over the Countess until she leaves, since she did save his life. Later, Duke Artem, now in his study, looks up expectantly. His aide reports a letter from the Imperial Palace, which the Duke dismisses, having already asked for news every hour. The aide confirms that aside from the letter, there is nothing else to report. The Duke asks if there have been any visitors, and the aide reminds him of his order to turn everyone away, sparking a sudden realization. Startled, he asks if his men have been turning away everyone because of his order. The aide confirms that not even an ant has come by, and the Duke looks out the window, concerned. Disguised in a brown cloak and a blonde wig, Rosé nervously clutches her hands. Standing outside the Duke's estate, she worries he won't recognize her in disguise and will throw her out. Her anxiety spikes as she imagines an even worse scenario. She imagines the Duke berating her for her nerve and contemptuously tossing money at her. Stealing her resolve, she decides she's come too far to back down. Just as a voice calls out, "Hey, you there?" 2 guards confront her, demanding to know why she is loitering outside the estate. Startled, Rosé stammers that she's come to see the Grand Duke to deliver an item from her master, but the guard looks skeptical. As the guards question her, Rosé sees a red-haired man observing them from atop the estate gate. The red-haired man approaches with a welcoming smile, offering his apologies and inviting her inside. Inside the estate, Rosé dismisses his apology and urgently asks for the Grand Duke, but the man asks her to wait a moment. He instructs a maid to bring tea for their guest, prompting an impressed "wow" from Rosé. Rosé internally remarks on how impressive it is for someone her age to already be a butler as he turns to leave. The butler returns, informing Rosé that the Grand Duke has been eagerly awaiting her, much to her surprise. As the butler offers her tea, Duke Artem appears behind him, ready to greet her. Duke Artem remarks that it's been a while, adding that he thought he'd never hear from her again. The scene shifts to Duke Felice, who sits in his study and declares that it's a shame. He laments that if his plan had succeeded, they would be rid of the Grand Duke, then sarcastically praises Count Wentz for his fine wife. Nobles murmur among themselves, criticizing Count Wentz for his inability to manage his own household. The gossip continues, speculating the Count was with another woman until an associate silences them, then dismisses the Count as a fool who didn't understand the plan and promises it won't happen again. The associate vows to have a firm talk with Count Wentz, as the Count is violently thrown to the ground. A woman furiously berates the Count, blaming him for the humiliation he has caused. Enraged, she orders him thrown out, regretting that she ever let Rosé into the house. Duke Felice gives a kneeling nobleman an ultimatum, ordering him to sort everything out within 1 month. Back at the Arthium estate, Duke Artem comments on how thorough Rosé was to disguise herself. Rosé, now in a simple dress, reflects that it would have been trouble if her true identity were discovered. The Duke internally thinks that her wig makes her look just like his pet dog Finn. He reaches for her hair, startling Rosé with a sudden movement. He apologizes, explaining with a smile that she just resembles his pet dog. Rosé says it's fine and removes the wig, privately annoyed at being compared to a dog. Clearing her throat, she presents a gift box to the Duke, saying she wants to give it to him before they talk. She explains with a smile that she had intended to give him the gift at the last banquet. Recalling the chaos of that night, she explains she kept it, noting it's not an extravagant gift. The Duke is surprised she prepared a gift for him and wonders what could be in the tiny box. Rosé offers to get him something better if he doesn't like it, but he simply asks her why. He begins to untie the ribbon on the gift box. The box opens to reveal a beautiful, sparkling topaz brooch. He inspects the brooch, thinking that while it's not a popular style, it's still quite nice. A small, adorable version of Rosé eagerly asks if he likes it. The Duke pins the brooch to his vest and, pleased with the result, asks how it looks. Rosé steps forward, offering to fix its position for him. As she adjusts the brooch, she asks if he knows the meaning of topaz, to which he asks if it has one. She explains topaz symbolizes protection of life and health, but internally she remembers the novel's plot, where the Grand Duke is fated to die soon. Rosé clenches her fist and gravely warns him that if things continue, he is headed for a horrible death. Duke Artem's expression grows serious as he listens intently to her warning. Rosé declares she doesn't want him to die, thinking that while the brooch is a wish for his safety, she also needs him alive to avoid suspicion falling on her family. She recalls her internal debate, choosing to try and prevent his death rather than simply use the situation to her advantage. The Duke considers her words with a thoughtful hum. He astutely realizes that if she knows how he will die, she must also know how to prevent it, surprising Rosé that he believes her. The Duke smiles warmly, reminding her that she's already saved him once, and asks her to start with her story.